In 1974, a young heiress was dragged screaming from her apartment by a group nobody had heard of. 2 months later, security cameras caught her holding a rifle, robbing a bank with the very people who took her. This is the story of Patty Hearst, a case so strange it still divides people to this day. This video lays out what happened, how a victim seemed to become a criminal, and the question that haunts the case. And the truth about what really changed inside her may be impossible to ever fully know. Who was Patty Hearst before all of this? She was a 19-year-old college student, and the granddaughter of one of the most powerful newspaper magnates in American history. Her family name meant money, influence, and headlines. She was living a normal student life with her fiancé when her world shattered. One February night, armed strangers broke into her apartment, beat her companion, and forced her into the trunk of a car. In a matter of minutes, the heiress vanished into the dark. Who took her, and why? Her captors called themselves a radical group with a strange name and a violent agenda. They were a small band of self-styled revolutionaries who believed they were fighting a war against the system. Kidnapping the granddaughter of a media giant was their way of grabbing the spotlight. They wanted attention, they wanted demands met, and they used her famous name to force the whole country to watch. At first, this looked like a straightforward kidnapping for ransom and pressure. What did they demand? Their requests were bizarre and enormous. Rather than simple cash for her safe return, the group pushed her wealthy family to give away huge amounts of food to the poor across the area. The family tried to comply, pouring a fortune into a food giveaway. But it was chaotic, and it was never enough to satisfy the captors. As the strange standoff dragged on, the public waited for news of the frightened young woman locked away somewhere. Then came the turn that nobody expected. How did the victim become something else? After weeks in captivity, a recording surfaced. In it, Patty announced that she had joined her captors. She took on a new name and declared that she now supported their cause. People could hardly believe it. The terrified heiress was suddenly speaking like one of the radicals who had stolen her from her bed. Had she truly changed sides, or was this a frightened young woman saying whatever it took to survive? That question landed like a bomb, and it has never fully gone away. Then came the moment caught on camera. What did the bank footage show? In April, a bank in San Francisco was robbed by the group, and there she was on the security tape, holding a rifle and standing with her captors during the crime. This was no longer a recording that could be doubted. It was an image, clear and chilling. The kidnapped heiress was now an armed participant in a felony. To the watching public, it seemed the impossible had happened. The victim had become an outlaw. So was she a willing criminal or a broken captive? This is the dark heart of the case. Her defenders argued she had been through something no person could resist. She had reportedly been locked in a closet, threatened, and cut off from the world, with her sense of reality slowly bent by fear and isolation. Under that kind of pressure, some believed, a person might cling to their captors just to stay alive, even coming to agree with them. Others were not convinced. They saw a woman with a gun and decided she had made her choice. What is the name for what may have happened to her? Many point to a psychological response sometimes seen in hostages, where a captive begins to bond with and even defend the people holding them. The mind, desperate to survive, can start to side with the very person who controls whether you live or die. If that is what gripped Patty Hearst, then the woman on that bank tape was not a rebel at all. She was a victim whose mind had been twisted by terror. But proving what happens inside someone's head is nearly impossible. How did it finally end for her? After more than a year on the run with the group, she was captured by the authorities. The frightened student was now facing serious criminal charges for her part in the robbery. Her arrest set up a trial that gripped the nation, with the whole country forced to answer the same impossible question. Was she responsible for her actions, or had she been broken into doing them? The courtroom became the stage for a debate about the limits of the human mind. What did the court decide? A jury found her guilty of the bank robbery. In the eyes of the law, she was held responsible for the crime, despite the kidnapping that came before it. She was sentenced to prison. The decision did not settle the deeper argument, though. Many felt the system had punished a victim. Years later, her sentence was cut short by one president, and she was later fully pardoned by another, a sign that even the highest powers in the country saw her case as something far from simple. Why did this case grip the entire country? Because it had everything. It had a famous family at its center and a twist that no one saw coming. The story dominated the news for months, with the public hooked on every update. People argued about it at dinner tables across the nation. Was she a brainwashed victim or a willing rebel? The fact that her family was so well known only turned up the heat. This was no quiet local crime. It was a national obsession playing out in real time, with the whole country acting as the jury long before the real one ever met. What happened during her time with the group? After the bank robbery, she did not simply slip away and go home. She stayed with the group and remained on the run for over a year, moving from place to place while the authorities hunted them. During that stretch, the group's violent path continued, and she was swept along with it. To outsiders, every passing month made it harder to see her as a simple captive. Yet her defenders argued that fear and control do not vanish the moment a captive steps outside. The chains, they said, had moved from her wrists to her mind. Could something like this happen to anyone? That is the unsettling question experts kept circling. Most people assumed they would resist, that they would never bend to their captors no matter what. But the human mind under extreme fear and total control does not always behave the way you would expect. Cut off from the world, threatened, and dependent on the very people who took you, the line between survival and surrender can blur. That is what makes the case more than a strange story. It is a window into how fragile the will can become. Here's what makes this case linger. It forces a brutal question with no clean answer. How much of what you do is truly your own choice, and how much can fear, pressure, and isolation rewrite who you are? Patty Hearst walked into that apartment as a victim and walked out of the saga as a convicted criminal, and the world still cannot agree on what she really was. Both stories fit the facts, and that is exactly why it refuses to fade. And that is the thought that stays with you. If the right amount of terror can turn an ordinary young woman into someone she would never recognize, then how certain can any of us be that we would have done differently in that closet? Like it, subscribe, and tell us in the comments. Victim or criminal? You decide.